In closing, I want to thank you for your time today and commitment to Nevada students. We urge your support to allow Washoe County School District the flexibility to move forward with iReady. Thank you.
Madam President, we have 2 public comments left. Our next one comes from Gia Massini.
If there is a speaker speaking, forgive me, but we cannot hear.
Yeah, he was. Is it good? Okay. Nice
Yes.
start again. Hello, members of the Board of Education and Superintendent Canavero. Thank you for this opportunity to address you today about the shift from math assessment to the new Read by 3 assessment. My name is Gia Marasini, and I am the principal of Matter Academy of Northern Nevada. We are a public Title I charter school attached to the Boys and Girls Club on 9th Street in Reno, Nevada. 3 times a year, our students take an iReady diagnostic test. We find that the data we receive from this test is very accurate and makes it possible for us to create individual learning goals as well as small learning groups to meet students at their current learning levels and help them grow towards proficiency. Our K-3 students also take the math assessment. We don't find the math assessment data as accurate or as informative when determining what the next best instructional steps are for our students. So our students take an assessment to meet a state requirement and nothing else. In a world where students spend far too much time on assessments, using an assessment tool that takes an average of 6 hours over the course of a year, a full day of instruction, and doesn't inform instruction is a waste of instructional time. Additionally, the professional development that Curriculum Associates provides to allow teachers to truly understand and use the data has been so beneficial in moving our students forward to proficiency. I've been a principal at Matter for 6 years and have never had any type of professional development support offered from math to allow a deeper dive into understanding the data from the math assessment. If we are going to administer assessments to students, we need to be able to understand the assessment and then know how to use that data to impact student learning. iReady has done a much better job of doing that. I'm in support of the move to iReady, and I ask this board to consider adopting the assessment today so we can begin to plan our assessment calendar for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last public comment comes from Troy Parks.
Good morning, President Doc Weiler, Interim Superintendent Dr. Canavero, and members of the board. For the record, I am Troy Parks, Chief Academic Officer for Secondary Education in the Washoe County School District. I'm here today to respectfully request that the Washoe County be granted the flexibility to opt out of using the state-selected interim assessment mapped growth for next year, and instead be allowed to use iReady to meet the requirements of the Read by Grade 3 law. This is both a necessary and responsible request. First and foremost, this is what's best for students. Under current requirements, our students in grades K through 3 take both the MAP and iReady 3 times a year in reading and math, 6 high-stakes assessments annually for our youngest learners. This kind of double testing is not defensible. It places an unnecessary burden on our teachers and staff, creates confusion for our educators and our families about which data is best. And the most importantly, it pulls students away from meaningful instruction to complete assessments that offer no added value. Second, WCSD adopted iReady not to create redundancy, but because we wanted a comprehensive K through 8 assessment platform. The state does not fund an interim assessment in math or in grades 4 through 8. So to provide consistent standards-aligned screening and instruction support across all grades, our district needed to adopt a tool. We chose iReady because it is simply a better fit. It aligns with the Nevada state standards. It gives our teachers, families, and students immediate, actionable, easily understandable data. It includes embedded videos, supports, and helps our educators address learning gaps and provides differentiated lessons that help our students accelerate and get the support they need. Using one high-quality system across K-8, both reading and math, also means clearer communication to our families and more instructional coherence for our educators. My final point, WCSD believes in accountability. And more importantly, we believe the most important purpose for assessment is to provide evidence for our educators whether or not our students are learning their grade level standards. Based on that evidence, our educators can immediately address the students who are struggling, meeting standards, and exceeding standards. Only then can our educators deliver on the promise to ensure high levels of learning for all of our students. Therefore, please consider doing what is best for our students and allow WCSD to utilize iReady for our K through 8 assessment platform, including using iReady to meet the requirements of Read by Grade 3. Thank you for your time and your continued commitment to Nevada students.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments up north?
Madam President, there are no other public comments.
Okay, we will move to the Las Vegas office where I believe we have one for public comment 1. And this is for Michael O'Dowd, principal at Pinecrest Academy.
Good morning, President Dockweiler and members of the board and our superintendent, Canavera. Michael O'Dowd, for the record. For the past 15 years, I've had the privilege of using iReady, both in the district and after I retired and worked for Pinecrest Academy at Pinecrest as well. And some of the reasons why I think number one is it does provide the diagnostic, which is a wonderful tool, and that's what everybody would get to use. But the best part about iReady is then from that diagnostic, creates an individual learning path for each student. And one of the things that's best about that is I think a lot of times we focus in on those struggling students. One thing iReady does a great job of is it focuses in on every student. We're able to give an individual learning path for those high achieving students, those students who are right on grade level, and yes, of course, the struggling students. Also, it's a great indicator or predictor of how students are going to perform on the Smarter Balance Assessment, which we have to take at the end of the year. And as you've heard before, iReady is serving all of our students K through 8, both for reading and for math. And so anyway, I would really encourage you to continue the discussion and looking at the procurement process. The procurement that crew selected iReady as their first choice, and there's many reasons why. So as you've heard with everybody before, and I hate to keep repeating what's been said, but I would ask that you just give schools the choice. If you're not ready to make the commitment and move forward fully with iReady, at least give the schools the choice if they're going to use MAP or iReady. Many other states allow that choice, and many of our schools are already using iReady, and so it would be a tool that would benefit our students and our teachers. And I can't emphasize as much as everybody else has already said. We're asking our youngest students to take iReady and MAP, and I know the state's asking them to take MAP so far, but if we switch to iReady, a lot of your schools are already doing both, and it would be very productive for our teachers and our students. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Have any written comments been submitted online?
Yes, we have a few written comments submitted online. I will go ahead and start with public comment for item number 10, submitted by Craig Stuckey.
President Dockweiler, Vice President Hughes, and members of the State Board of Education, thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment. First, I urge the State Board to discontinue the goal of moving from the top 20 to the top 10 in the quality counts K through 12 student achievement rankings. This report has not been updated since 2021, and as of March 2024, Education Week publicly announced it will no longer produce it. Basing long-term strategic goals on a discontinued metric is no longer valid or useful. Second, I recommend the State Board reconsider its goals related to the College and Career Readiness Diploma. Although legislation passed in 2023 established the CCR diploma as a default diploma, it does not actually measure college or career readiness. The 3.25 GPA requirement aligns with eligibility for the Millennium Scholarship, not the entrance standards for Nevada's post-secondary institutions. Additionally, GPA is not an appropriate proxy for career readiness. Employers prioritize technical competencies and professional skills over academic GPAs. A student who demonstrates proficiency in a career pathway should not be disqualified from earning a CCR diploma due to their overall GPA. These are two distinct measures and should not be intertwined. I encourage the board to define college and career readiness in terms that reflect the expectations of both Nevada's higher education institutions and the state's employers. Setting a goal of 100% of the students graduating truly ready for college and or careers would better reflect the purpose of a high school diploma. Without this readiness, a diploma represents only that a student spent 12 to 13 years in the system, not that they are prepared for life after graduation. Thank you for your consideration. The next emailed public comment was submitted by Jenny Anderson. Good afternoon. Thank you for your work on the NDE board and for your support for all districts across our state. I wanted to reach out to you with my concern over the Read by Grade 3 assessment being discussed at your upcoming meeting. Throughout my time as a principal and now in central office, our reading data across the state has not improved. We have continued to use NWEA MAP as a compliance tool to report to the state. This has not resulted in actionable information that guides our institutional practices nor increases students' learning. During your last meeting, I really appreciated Member Orr's suggestion of the 2025-2026 school year being held harmless and allowing for districts to choose to move forward with the committee's recommendation of iReady or continue for the year with MAP. I believe that these honors where each district may be at and allows for those who have already seen the great value in iReady to make even better use of this tool. There is much coming our way with it being legislative session, and anything you can do to help to make use of tools we are working to reduce compliance-based testing would be greatly appreciated. Continuing with MAP would continue to require our students K through 3 to engage in double testing multiple times throughout the year. MAP for compliance and iReady for instructional choices and students learning. Kind regards, Jenny Anderson, Director. The next email public comment received was from Michelle Freeland. Dear members of the Nevada State Board of Education, I am writing in regards to an agenda item scheduled for the May 14th, 2025 board meeting concerning possible action on the selection of Read by Grade 3 assessment. I know that you must consider the needs of all school districts that you serve, but I would like to share my perspective as a language learning strategist in Clark County School District.
providing data-driven Tier 2 instruction to elementary students. I urge you to consider using math as the read by grade 3 assessment. As you know, math by NWEA is the universal screener for CCSD. And when making choices about the needs of the students I serve, I use additional tools, including FastBridge for fluency and a phonics screener if needed, as outlined by my district. I strongly believe that we need consistency, and keeping math provides continuity and allows teachers to monitor growth and rich historical data. Switching to a new read by grade 3 assessment would mean starting to collect new data from scratch. This would make it hard to determine the efficacy of our current Tier 1 ELA curriculum and Tier 2 programs. Other assessments like iReady may provide diagnostic data, but I am concerned how the data would align with the new curricula that CCSD implemented in recent years, including HMH into Reading 4, 95 Phonics, and Phonics Lesson Library for intervention. The timing of this potential change greatly concerns me. Teachers report back in 10 weeks and will need to begin benchmark assessments shortly after that. This timeline feels rushed and will not provide teachers the time they need to learn a new platform, how to administer the assessment, and analyze new reports. These reports will be vital to creating the required student literacy performance plan, a new format that CCSD teachers began using in the fall of 2024. Please make these concerns into consideration when making your choice about whether to keep or replace math by NWEA. Thank you for your time, Michelle Freeland. Next public comment we received by Colby. Dear Nevada Board of Education, I am writing on behalf of Washoe School Principals Association to formally request approval to pilot the use of iReady reading as an alternative to MathRow assessments to fulfill the reading-based graduation requirement 3 for our students. After careful evaluation of both platforms, we believe iReady offers a more comprehensive and instructional, meaningful approach. iReady not only provides accurate and standards-aligned diagnostic data, but also generates individualized learning pathways for students, supporting differentiated instructional in real time. This allows our educators to target student needs more precisely and efficiently. Moreover, the iReady platform integrates seamlessly into instructional planning, offering actionable data that informs day-to-day teaching practices. Unlike MAPS, which provides more summative results, iReady gives teachers ongoing insights that can immediately impact classroom instructions and intervention strategies. A key advantage of this shift would be a reduction in assessment redundancy. iReady's combined diagnostic and instructional tools minimize the need for additional testing, thereby increasing valuable teaching time and reducing student test fatigue. Given these significant benefits, we respectfully request the opportunity to pilot iReady reading as a qualified assessment under the Read by Grade 3 guidelines. We are committed to collecting and sharing data from the pilot to demonstrate its effectiveness in meeting the required benchmarks. Thank you for considering this request. We look forward to the possibility of working with the department to explore more efficient, instructionally aligned approaches that truly serve the needs of our students and teachers. Sincerely, Colby, WSPE or SPA President, Principal. And then I also received a few other public comments with the same sentiment. would you like me to, instead of reading them all into the record, Madam President, to just, let you know who submitted the public comments?
Yes, please. How many of their names?
We have We have 14 more public comments. So the first one was submitted by Wyatt Darrow. The next one was submitted by Joseph Almafi.
Amanda, can you clarify what agenda item and if there's what the comments are relative to?
They're all for the agenda item number 8 and in support of the iReady to be able to use this as a state approved assessment tool.
Thank you.
The next one was submitted by Manuel Herrera. Next one was submitted by Daryl Watt. Chrissy Pace. Angelique Reeder. Laura Davidson. Lucy Force. Joelle Daniels. Damon Eater. Addison Aker. Stephanie Foreman. Leah Anderson. And Angie Bryan. And Madam President, we don't have any more public comments.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I want to thank all individuals who provided public comment in person or online. We greatly appreciate hearing from you. Thank you. Now we will move on to agenda item 3, approval of flexible agenda as we conclude public comment period number 1. May I have a motion to approve the use of a flexible agenda, allowing me to take items out of order if necessary?
Member Hudson, move to have a flexible agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Right, Member Ford seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. So now we will move on to agenda item 4, the president's report. And the very first item you will see here is we would like to honor Member Keys, our student member, for his dedication, his service, his thoughts, his intuitions, his perceptions, so many valuable things that you bring to this board. As a board, we have been very grateful for the student members who have served in the capacity that you are currently serving in. So thank you for all that you do. Having your voice is invaluable. We have a little something that we have prepared for you. However, due to supply chain issues, it's not here. So we will get that to you as soon as we can, but I would like to open it up to any other board members who would like to say something. Vice President Hughes.
Yeah, thank you. Vice President Hughes, record, just again want to reiterate our thanks for your service. And the thing I will share that I've always been so impressed with is just sort of that you do your homework, you know the issues, make sure your opinions are informed, and just come to the board meetings with passion for the work, which is super important. So just really appreciate that and hope to see you keep doing that, and excited to see what's next for you.
Member Braxton.
Member Braxton, for the record. Member Keys, I just want to say that you're a true champion for the student's voice, and I appreciate you. It's needed. I hear you, I see you, and as well as the other students. Oftentimes it's a concern when students are not engaged, but you do exemplify that, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Member Orr, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Member Orr, for the record. I, as a former student leadership advisor, I just am always so impressed by our young people, but there's no one better suited for this position than someone who really has garnered the support of students throughout the state to stand up and use their voices. And I'm just so impressed by your work and always coming with ideas that are thought-provoking and really make me want to do better. So thank you.
Well said, Member Orr. Member Hudson.
I second everyone and what they said, but I also wanted to just tell you how much, like, I'm proud, like, you are the example of what not CCSD, but Nevada can do for our students. Your ideas, you just leading and taking charge of making sure your vision does come right is something that is amazing. Just like Member Orr has said, like, you make me want to be a better educator to make sure that I'm leading students to become exactly like you or similar to you, because we can't make you again. But I'm like so ready to see what you do for, hopefully you stay in Nevada, for us. So yes, thank you so much for everything. Thank you. You're doing for us.
Any other board members like to say something? Because I would like to turn it over to Member Dawson Owens and then to Member Keys to offer any final words.
Thank you. I know I've only been able to be on a couple of meetings with you, but I've also been listening when you've been on other meetings talking about you're not sure if your voice matters, but it absolutely does. Never underestimate the power of one and keep advocating for that student voice. That's why we're here, I believe, why we do what we do. And there is great hope always, and everyone is always in Nevada, right?
Thank you. We didn't have a chance to really work together too much, but I have been watching you. I've seen the things that you do to organize other students. And even though we didn't work together this time around, I will watch from afar and cheer on. So I will be doing that.
And you know, last year was just so great, and then being reappointed by the governor was really a great experience, and being able to not only have my voice heard, but to show other people how to make their voice heard. Through my student council conference, a bunch of people came up to me and they were like, "Thank you for being our voice." And I just had to remind them that no one's your voice. I'm just trying to show you how to use yours. And I think that's why we're all here. And so I definitely won't be leaving Nevada. I'm going to UNR in the fall, so I'm really excited for that. Go Pack. So yeah, I'm going to be studying public policy and administration there, and I hope to stay in Nevada. And I definitely won't be going anywhere. I might stop by for a quick comment or two, just because there's so much going on right now. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Member Keys, for your service, you've chosen an APT major, and we look forward to see what you do in the future. And before this meeting is finished, perhaps at break, we all need to take a photo. Okay. So with that, we'll move on to continued president's report, and I will lean on my committee members who are leading subcommittees. So we will start with updates relative to the AB 469 subcommittee by Member Braxton.
Great, thank you, Chancellor Ducklow. This is Member Braxton for the record. Since being appointed on March 12th, the AB 469 subcommittee, which includes myself along with members Ford and Hudson, has started meeting formally to get grounded in the work ahead. We've been taking time to better understand the context of AB 469, which is the foundation for NRS 383 through 801. The board authorized us to propose parameters for adding new members, and I've reached out to DIPOD for guidance on that process. We're currently awaiting response. Thanks again to everyone who has engaged with us so far. We're just getting started, and there's a lot of good work ahead. We look forward to sharing what we've learned during a special subcommittee meeting in June.
Excellent. Thank you, Member Braxton. And to provide some additional context relative to these updates, this is part of our initiative to provide some feedback loops to the public relative to our work. So this is one way in which we are doing that. Now I will turn it over to Member Orr to provide us with an update on the at-risk subcommittee.
Thank you, Member Orr, for the record. As you know, over the last 10 months, during several meetings, the issue of at-risk funding has come up. It's been an issue that the public has weighed in on several times, and there was a hearing about this several months ago. We then set up a committee, and we will be having a hearing next week on the 20th at 2 p.m. We hope to garner some additional feedback from the community. This is a really important issue. This impacts funding, and our goal is to come up with the best way to have the most transparent and stable process for funding at risk funding for our school districts. So it is really important, and we hope to, hear from the public at that subcommittee.
Thank you, Member Orr, for that update. And we encourage everyone to participate in that meeting next week, should you be able to. Next, we move on to our working groups for curriculum and the STIP, and Vice President Hughes will provide us with an update on both items.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so if you all may remember, several months ago, we started discussing how we could improve our process for curriculum selection. And so we had some subcommittee meetings and then ultimately decided to take those recommendations into a longer working group. It would have sort of multiple stakeholders. And so just wanted to, so that happened in basically sort of February through March. And so from here, just to give you a sense of the timeline, the goal is by December of 2025, we would have completed the process. And so there'll be a series of working groups. So they'll dig into some data, they'll look at best practices, they'll look at our current recommendations. We got some survey data from vendors and other stakeholders that we will look at. And then ultimately we'll hopefully then in 2026 use that new process to select curricula. The other thing is there is one adoption that's up in the middle of that timeline. And so my understanding is we're going to push that back a little bit. So I think it's social studies maybe, so that we're going to use a new process when the next adoption comes up so that we don't use an old process and then a month later switch it. And so we are going to adjust those timelines. I don't know, Deputy Superintendent Dixon, if you can clarify, I'm not sure. I know we talked about having a state board member on the working group, and I think in April was when the first working group was going to be held, but I know there's been a lot of transitions at the department. So I don't, you just share where the working group's at.
Yes, thank you for the question. For the record, Anne-Marie Dixon. We are scheduling our meeting this month, and we're going to meet with the team this week. And then I will reach out to you, Member Hughes, to see if you would like to be that representative or if you would like to have someone take your place.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so that is the update there. The other quick update is around the STIP. And so just give folks understanding of where that's at. So we approved the STIP a few months ago, given the March deadline, but had agreed that because there were so many moving pieces, we wanted to revisit it and update it. And so I was able to meet with our Chief Strategy Officer, Liz Ford, and we had some conversations about ways we might strengthen sort of the framework. And then we are working to update our board goals, which is on our agenda for later today. So we'll start talking about that. And then we also know there's a bunch of changes happening in the session right now. And so we're hoping to kind of triangulate all of those pieces. And then once they're through, both updating our board goals, and then once we see what happens when it's finally passed in the legislature, we'll come back and do some updates to the STIP to make sure it's relevant and fresh and gives us the focused approach that we need to move forward as a state. I think that is it.
Thank you, Vice President Hughes. At this time, I will open up to any board members who would like to provide any additional updates. Member Hudson. No, not Member Hudson. I'm looking up north. Anybody up north? No? Okay. Member Keys.
Yeah, thank you. Over the past month, I've been
working with various students on different things. And that generally has led to a lot of student engagement in Nevada, which is great to see. I wanted to invite all of our board members. A group of students is hosting kind of a town hall this Sunday. It is at Las Vegas Academy of the Arts in the Loden Theater. It is 12 to 3 p.m. If anyone can email me, I can send you the link to sign up. But there's going to be a lot of elected officials up there. I believe Superintendent Ebert will be there and a few other officials. So it would be great to have everyone. I also wanted to say thank you to all the staff members across Nevada that continue to work on our dual enrollment programs. It's one thing to talk about how great it is, and it's another to actually experience it. So I was able to attend the commencement for Great Basin College in Pahrump over this weekend. I graduated with my Associates of Arts in General Studies, which is great. I did that completely through dual credit. I didn't have to pay for any of the classes. I just needed to pay for my books. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to everyone. I think there were 4 students, dual credit students at that commencement. And I know that there were other commencements across the state. Because Great Basin just serves such a large majority of our state. So yeah, that's my update.
Okay, we're back. First of all, congratulations on the associates. That's a huge accomplishment. So way to go. And looping back to the event this Sunday, May 17th at LVA, do you have a time? What time is the event? Member Key says 12 to 3. His mic is also having some difficulty.
Sorry, thank you so much. Member Braxton and I had the opportunity to attend the largest farmers market here and actually in the country, and it was amazing. Apologize for my low show and tell, but amazing soap and items that the kids are making. Piggy bank, it's amazing if you have not been. And financial literacy, thank you Green Our Planet for unveiling financial literacy curriculum for K through 12, and it was a spectacular event. One other shout out to Dawson School. I was able to go and sit as a judge on their capstone panels, and amazing work that they're doing, connecting with the community, finding nonprofit partners about issues that are important in our community. A lot of great topics, including access to early education, sex trafficking, health issues. Really a great job, and it was again always great to see these amazing entrepreneurs and the kids being engaged and involved in our community and events and the learning that's going on there. So great things in our schools.
All right, I'm Member Braxton from Project. I just want to give a shout out to all of the educators or teachers who participated in the UNLV Project Preload program. This was a program where our teachers presented, actually they represented schools throughout CCSD, and they showcased their research on addressing opportunities for success within CCSD. Project Pueblo provides elementary and second level teachers with tools and strategies to support learning, content, and language development of students from multi-ethnic communities. It was very informative. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for all the updates, members. So with that, we will go to our interim superintendent's report, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Canavero.
Thank you, President Dockweiler, and to members of the board, Steve Canavero, your interim state superintendent of public instruction.
I just want to say I think I'm 4 weeks into the role, and I have felt like I've had to catch a moving train. At times I feel like I've got run over by it. At times I feel like I'm on it. Other times I feel like I'm chasing it. But that's really much credit to Superintendent Ebert and to this board for your leadership, your collective leadership, and the development of an exceptional team at the Department of Education. So it's been an honor to get to know folks who are new for me, and it's also been a luxury to reconnect with folks from my prior service. I'm just going to work through a couple of items fairly quickly, but I also don't want to shortchange some of the appreciations that I have in my update. Last week marked Teacher Appreciation Week and State Workers Appreciation Week. The department had a number of activities for our staff, and 10 of our NDE colleagues received certificates of recognition from Governor Lombardo for their years of service to the Silver State. The certificates are hand-signed by the governor, and they celebrate significant milestones in public service. So I just would like to read a few names into the record. The recipients for their public service recognition include Jeffrey Hoover, Christine First, Mava Picard, John Hoban, Paul Pertita, Andre De Leon, Sharon Usher, Deborah Aquino, Don Boiter, and Jana Mulberry. And Jana received the highest at 26 years of service. So congratulations to those staff, both in Las Vegas and in Carson City. Related, as a way to further celebrate our educators and inspire the next generation, the department launched the Be a Champion campaign on May 1st. Leading up to Teacher Appreciation Week, this initiative highlights the profound difference teachers make in the lives of their students. We have a number of videos that were part of the media package around Be the Champion campaign. We planned on sharing one with you today, but what we'll do is share links. Some of you may have already seen the videos. They're available, but we'll share links to the board so that you can look at those tearjerker videos that the team produced. April was the month of the military child, a special time to acknowledge the unique sacrifices and remarkable resilience of the military connected students and the schools serving them. These children bring so much to our schools and communities, and our Purple Star schools truly exemplify a dedicated commitment to ensuring their well-being and success. Schools that receive this year's Purple Star School Award include Bilbray Elementary School, Carol M. Johnston STEM Academy, Henry and Evelyn Bozarth Elementary School, Indian Spring School, Legacy Traditional Schools, Southwest, North Valleys High School, Oasis Academy, both its elementary and its high, Sierra Vista High School, Somerset Academy, Lone Mountain, Somerset Academy, Sky Point, and Montessori Visions Academy, which is a private school. Just to give you an indication what this might look like on the ground, Somerset Academy, Sky Point serves 150 military connected students. The next item is the developmental delay update, which, as I understand, the board had asked for. And specifically regarding the developmental delay eligibility category. And following Director Bauer's presentation on other states' practices, we consulted with special ed directors across Nevada. Their professional consensus is that if the state board decides to change when a student exits this category, their strong preference is to set that age at 7. Again, at age 7. This recommendation is based on their direct experience in effectively identifying and supporting students with developmental delays. To move forward, if the board agrees with this recommendation, our staff is prepared to place this item on a future meeting agenda for your consideration and possible approval. This would then allow us to draft the specific regulatory language and begin the formal change process. Alternatively, if the board wishes to explore this topic further before making a decision, we're also ready to work with you to define what additional information or study would be helpful. And lastly, just as a personal note, I want to conclude my report today and take a moment to acknowledge the upcoming retirement of Deputy Superintendent Anne-Marie Dixon at the end of this month. For the past 2 years, Anne-Marie has served the state with considerable dedication and distinction in her role overseeing the Student Achievement Division. Her leadership has been instrumental in guiding statewide efforts aimed at enhancing academic outcomes, promoting equitable opportunities for all students throughout Nevada. Her strategic thinking and steadfast commitment have been vital in advancing our collective goals for student success. Anne-Marie's contributions have had a significant impact on the state's landscape. Her collaborative approach and deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities within our system have made her a respected leader and valued partner. Speaking for all of us at the department and knowing that our gratitude is shared by colleagues statewide, we want to express our sincere appreciation to Anne-Marie for years of dedicated service and her steadfast commitment to students of Nevada. Anne-Marie, we wish you a fulfilling and enjoyable retirement as you embark on this next chapter. Thank you very much. And with that, President Dockweiler, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Interim Superintendent Canavero, and congratulations, Deputy Superintendent Dixon, on your upcoming retirement. We wish you well and thank you for your years of service. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda, which is item 6. I trust that our board members have had ample opportunity to review the consent agenda and support materials. As a reminder, board members are asked to review all materials and request clarification in writing. Any board member may pull an item for discussion, or we can approve them with a single motion. One point of clarification that I would like to make is to item C. Member Dawson Owens is not with the Chamber of Commerce. She is with the Children's Advocacy Alliance, so I would offer that change for the record. All right, would any members like to pull an item for discussion, or may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Member Braxton, I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second, any second?
Member Hudson, second.
All right, Member Hudson seconds. Any discussion? Yeah, so Member Braxton, would you mind making the motion with the change to Children's Advocacy Alliance?
I motion to amend the change of Member Dawson Owens to the Children's Advocacy Alliance.
Thank you.
Member Hudson, second.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Seeing none, any abstentions? Right, so moved. So now, moving on to agenda item 7, the time is 10:24. We are now opening the hearing on the proposed changes to Nevada Administrative Code Chapter 388, specifically sections 460 through 488. The proposed amendments focus on removing the sections within the Nevada Administrative Code that correspond to language which has already been repealed in the Nevada Revised Statutes. Please note that on May 2nd, the department held a workshop on this proposed action. At this time, we welcome Julie Bowers, Director of the Office of Comprehensive Student Services, to present the sections of the Nevada Administrative Code under discussion and to answer any questions. Director Bowers, please proceed when you are ready.
Good morning, President Dockweiler and board members. For the record, my name is Julie Bowers, and I am the Director of the Office of Comprehensive Services at the Nevada Department of Education. I am here today to talk about the programs for persons with disabilities with unique needs, NAC sections 388.460 through 388.488. These NAC sections, again, 388.460 through 388.488, need to be repealed because they explicitly reference and were designed to implement NRS sections 395.30, 395.40, 395.50, and 395.60, which have since been repealed. Maintaining regulations that are directly tied to non-existent statutory authority creates confusion, and lacks the legal basis for their continued enforcement. The outdated application process for out-of-district placement described in these NAC sections has also been replaced by the contingency account for special education or the case process. As outlined in 388-5223 through 388-5243, 23 to 43, it is and its implementing regulations. NAC 388.319 and NAC 388.323. Therefore, this repeal is necessary to ensure regulatory accuracy, consistency with current law, and to avoid delay in districts and charter schools being reimbursed for extraordinary program expenses in the implementation of individualized education programs for students with significant disabilities. In order to give some context, I will review a little bit of the timeline of legislative actions. Pre-2015, NRS Chapter 395 governed education services and rights for persons with disabilities in Nevada. In 2015, Senate Bill 50 was introduced to modernize and reorganize Nevada's education code, including statutory language affecting special education. After the 2015 session, stakeholder engagement, review of duplicative and outdated statutes, and discussions of consolidation into Chapter 388 began, and several amendments and repeals were introduced via an omnibus education reform legislation. Chapter 395 was marked for repeal and then officially repealed, with its relevant sections consolidated into updated provisions under NAC NRS Chapter 388. Presently, all guidance, policy, and legal references are required to cite NRS Chapter 388, which now includes definitions, rights, procedures, and obligations previously found in Chapter 395. To summarize, Chapter 395 was originally dedicated to special education services for individuals with disabilities, outlining the state's obligations to provide free, appropriate public education, or FAPE, due process rights, and procedural safeguards. As part of a broader legislative modernization effort, Nevada's legislature determined that maintaining a separate chapter for special education created redundancy and legal fragmentation. To resolve this, Chapter 395 was repealed in full, and its core legal and operational elements were revised and relocated to NRS Chapter 388, Nevada's primary chapter on public instruction. This change mirrors best practice in other states and aligns new state law more closely with the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA. The repeal of NRS Chapter 395 and its incorporation into NRS Chapter 388 was a structural reorganization, not a rollback of rights or services. I will say that again. It was a reorganization, not a rollback of rights or services for our students with disabilities. Currently, under state board regulations, NAC 388.319 and 388.323, the NDE has implemented the contingency account for special education through a state-approved application process. The case application is distributed to all districts each spring. All districts may apply for students meeting the requirements for extraordinary special education program expenses for students with significant disabilities. The NDE reviews all applications with the superintendent, carefully scoring each using a rubric to determine eligibility and the amount of reimbursement. The NDE has approved and reimbursed residential service costs for districts, demonstrating a direct link between the necessity of these services and the students' educational success in their applications. The NDE can only use case funding to reimburse districts that apply and meet the criteria for extraordinary circumstances exceeding what is reasonably expected for FAPE provision. Unused funds at the end of the fiscal year do not carry over and the account does not build. It is only replenished to $2 million annually. The NDE has no access to these unused funds. This was how the system was set up through the legislative process. NDE can only access funds that have been requested by districts through a case application. Regarding the small business impact, the district obligations of FAPE for students remain intact. The repeal of this regulation does nothing to interrupt this obligation. The process changed per legislature, and any small business may contract directly with the district, as we have seen in practices over the years. Should concerns about harm arise from these regulation changes, the NDE should be notified. The NDE concludes that NAC sections 388.460 through 388.488 must be repealed because they explicitly reference and were designed to implement repealed NRS sections 395.30, 395.40, 395.50, and 395.60. This repeal aims to prevent further confusion for districts seeking support for students with extraordinary needs through the established and state board-approved case process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Director Bowers, for your presentation. We will now move on to public comments relative to this item. And for hearings of this nature, there are no time limits for those public comments. So are there any public comments in person in Carson City?
We do. Neil Rombardo. Great. Thank you.
We'll start at the top then, since there's no time limit. Good morning. My name is Neil Rombardo, and I'm the General Counsel for the Washoe County School District. Besides the fact that you have multiple community law violations and a notice issue, you also were just deceived. I would ask you to take a look at Exhibit 1 that I provided you yesterday. Does everyone have that? Great. So you were told that the NAC that is being repealed references 395. I will point out NAC 388.460 nowhere references NRS 395. In fact, it was updated. Subsection 3 references NRS 388.5219. 388.5219 is the statute before 388.5223 found in Exhibit 2. So if this hasn't been updated, why is it referencing a statute that still exists? Let's move on to NAC 388.462. NAC 388.462 specifically references NRS 388.5211 to NRS 388.5243. Again, nowhere does that NAC reference NRS 395 as you were just told. In fact, let's look at Exhibit 2. NRS 5243 is found in Exhibit 2. And let's take a look at 388.5211 to 388.5243. Let's take a look at Exhibit 2. NRS 388.5223, NRS 388.5239, NRS 388.5241. Those are all current NRS. So you're being led to believe that it's referencing statutes that don't exist, but yet they exist. Here they are. Let's keep going. NAC 388.464. It specifically references in paragraph 2, NRS 388.5211 to NRS 388.5243. Again, let's look at Exhibit 2, 388.5223 to NRS 388.5243. So if the legislature repealed this, then why is it referencing statutes that currently exist? You have to ask yourself this. I'm asking you to be intellectually honest with yourself. I'm not saying that Ms. Bowers is lying or anything else, but what I am saying is you're being misled. And that's what's important here. But let's keep going. NAC 388.466. NAC 388.466 specifically references NRS 388.5223. And we're looking at Exhibit 1. Let's flip over to Exhibit 2. Wow, it starts. If you take a look at NRS 388.5223, that's the top statute in the NRS that I provided you on Exhibit 2. Let's keep going. NAC 388-468. NAC 388-468 doesn't reference any statute, but all the surrounding acts do reference statutes that currently exist. Now, let's keep moving forward. The next reference to an NRS can be found in, let's see, I'll just keep going. Let's look at NAC 388-478, subparagraph 3. Subparagraph 3 cites NRS 388-5223 to NRS 388-5243. Let's look at Exhibit 2. The exact same statutes that I provided you, that they're alleging, that they're telling you, these statutes repealed this NAC, but yet this NAC references them every single time. You are being misled. Again, Exhibit 2, NRS 388-5223 to NRS 388-5243. Cited in NAC 388-478. That's what they're asking you to repeal. Now, 388.482, page 2 of 3 on Exhibit 1, references 388-5223 to NRS 388-5243. Exhibit 2, NRS 388-5223 to NRS 388-5243. How is it repealed? How? Now, 388.488, page 3 of 3 of Exhibit 1, paragraph 1, references NRS 388-5223 to NRS 388-5243. Exhibit 2, NRS 388-5223, NRS 388-5243. NAC was updated. What wasn't shared with you is that there was, well, I guess it was shared to some extent. There was an ombudsman bill where NRS 395 was moved into NRS 388. And for those of us in education law, we know that. But this NAC was updated to meet those NRS. So if it's updated, it's on the books, and it applies to residential placement, so why are you repealing it? There's no confusion here. There's no confusion at all. The only confusion is by the Nevada Department of Education. The school districts know this. And we've requested that we get help for a student in severe needs. Instead of getting help, what we got was, do it our way, or we're not going to consider your application. And then what we got is, we're going to repeal the NAC. Let's just talk about fairness. Fundamental fairness. Does that sound fair? Doesn't sound fair to me. And I'll tell you who it's not fair for, is that child. It's not fair for the other 60,000 kids that I'm representing today. Now, let's take a look at Exhibit 3, which is what I was trying to talk about earlier, and I appreciate the opportunity to be heard in this public hearing. Exhibit 3 that I provided you is the Nevada Revised Statute, and this was an amendment that occurred in 2021. That's the top of the page if you were to look at page 1 of 1. It's 2021 Statutes of Nevada, pages 1081 to 1212. A little interesting thing, most people don't know this, Nevada Revised Statutes are actually not the official statutes. The official statutes in the state of Nevada are called the Statutes of Nevada. And that's where you find things like funding and things of that nature. This was an amendment that occurred in 2021. You heard Ms. Bowers say that the CASE program is the appropriate program to get residential placement for a student with severe needs. And actually, I'm going to use a different term because this is the term that's in the law. It's for a student with disabilities, with unique needs. And that's what we have. And when you look at the law, this is the law of the state of Nevada. In 2021, 388.5243 was amended. And you know what was removed from the state law? The contingency account for special education. Now, I'm not suggesting you get rid of the contingency account for special education, but what I am telling you And you can read it right there for yourself. It's as clear as the nose on your face. If anything was withdrawn by the legislature, it's the contingency account for special education, not the program for persons with disabilities with unique needs. It's right here. In fact, the new account is called the account for state special education services, not the contingency account for special education, as you're being led to believe today. But let's flip over to Exhibit 4. Exhibit 4 is what the department has told us we need to apply for our students. And guess what Exhibit 4 says? Now, 388.319. Let's just look at the title. Contingency account for special education. Let's go back and look at Exhibit 3, the first paragraph. What was withdrawn from the NRS 388.5243? The contingency account for special education. Because it's now called the account for state special education. Again, I'm not suggesting you withdraw that. NAC 388.319. But what I am saying is, don't sit up here and say that the program for persons with disabilities with unique needs was withdrawn when by law, specifically as clear as the nose on anyone's face in this room and down in Las Vegas, the contingency account for special education was withdrawn. Stop it. Let's take a look at NAC 388.323. The contingency account for special education. Look at the title. That's in Exhibit 4, the bottom NAC, for anybody who's not following along. Now, moving back to Exhibit 3 that I provided. Again, 388, which is the state law, NRS 388.5243, what was withdrawn? The contingency account for special education, which is now called the account for state special education. And we pointed all this out to the NDE and we've asked for help. We have a student with disabilities with unique needs. And what we've been told is apply under case. Let me tell you why case doesn't apply. First of all, let's look at Exhibit 5. Exhibit 5 is page 4 of the NDE's own application for case. This alleged plan that works. Page 4, I want to be clear, I want everyone in Vegas to hear me because you're the voting members on this. Page 4 is the NDE's, or excuse me, Exhibit 5 is the NDE's page 4 of its application under case, which was already withdrawn, but we'll pretend that that's not the case. We'll just go with it. This is the application they asked us to fill out to give our student with unique needs who needs a residential placement because there's nowhere, anywhere in Nevada that can serve this child. This is the application that they asked us to fill out. Please take a moment and take a deep breath. Are you ready? Look at this second check mark up from the bottom. Residential costs of private schools placements are prohibited under case. Case funding may not be used for, let me reread it, I'm going to read it directly. This is your application. Case funding may not be used for residential costs of private school placements. So why, as a district, when I have a student with a disability, with unique needs, would I ever apply under case? You specifically are telling me it does not apply. I'm just asking you to use common sense, nothing more. This isn't even legal. Don't even get me started with the legal stuff. Now, I digress. Don't get me started with the legal stuff, but I wouldn't be me if I didn't get to the legal stuff. Let's take a look at Exhibit 3, or excuse me, not Exhibit 3, Exhibit 4, 388.319. Here's what 388.319 states. This section can be used to pay for certain expenses. Related services, paragraph 3, subsection B. Special education services, subsection C. Supplementary aids and services, subsection D. And transition services, subsection E. All of those are specifically defined in law. You can look them up yourself. There's the NACs. One of them will send you to the federal IDEA. But you know what is not included in any of those expenses? Wait for it, residential placement. So again, why would a school district apply for residential placement under the NAC? Now you're going to hear the department say to you in response to this, that, well, we have approved residential placements under the NAC. I can't rely on that. I can't rely on that. I rely on the law. I rely on what's written. I rely on what's in front of me. And I cannot rely on the arbitrary and capricious nature of decision makers that refuse to follow the NAC and refuse to follow the NRS. And it's time for you as a board to step up and do what's right. And what's right, look, I'm not even asking you to vote no. Push pause. Think about it. If you cannot be comfortable with what has been presented to you. I have shown you 100 different ways why it's mistaken and why this is a mistake. You owe it to the students of this state. I'm going to point out one other. In December, the NDE, through the Board of Examiners, approved an $800,000 contract for a special education lawyer, not licensed in Nevada, licensed in Arizona, to provide them legal advice. It's on the Board of Examiners agenda. Take a look at it. Look at it for yourself. $800,000 for 2 years, $400,000 a year. That's about exactly what my student needs, one I'm advocating. Let's make it even better. Yesterday, the Board of Examiners approved the contract for this same lawyer at the request of NDE using IDEA funds. For those of you that don't know, that's special education funds, which is what my student needs. $1.8 million over 4 years. That's $2.6 million over 4 years. I will let you know that I'm retiring soon and I'll be putting in that RFP because I am actually licensed in this state and I'm actually a lawyer in this state. But $2.6 million will pay for my student who I'm advocating for today for the rest of the time that he needs this service. So stop it. Just stop this train. And just stop. That's all I'm asking for. That's all the people of Washoe County are asking for. I'm here representing 60,000 students. I'm here representing their families. I'm here representing our community. I'm proud to represent the Washoe County School District. And no offense to my friends down south or in any other district, I think we're the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romardo. Are there any other public comments in Carson City?
Madam President, there are no other public comments in Carson City.
Are there any in Las Vegas? I'm not seeing any. Okay, any online? We received an email from Jonathan McGuire, Associate Attorney from Simons Hall Johnson, that was shared with the board and submitted for public records. All right, thank you. I believe board members have questions. Before I turn it over to my fellow board members, I would like to ask some clarifying questions of Deb Ott. Could you please speak to some of the points that were raised relative to the existence of the statute that we're being told has been repealed. If funds are available to pay, and just kind of speak to some of the points that were raised and the concerns.
Deputy Attorney General Greg Ott, happy to, President. So keep in mind that we're in active litigation with the Washington County School District. They filed suit against the Department of Education. We got a hearing on Friday, so you're kind of being caught in the middle of some legal arguments, and I apologize that I'll try to kind of keep it focused on the regulatory workshop. I just wanted you guys to know about the broader context. What you heard from Ms. Bowers was accurate. There was special education funding existed in Chapter 395 of NRS up to about 2015. If you look at the regulations that Mr. Romardo provided, you'll see that most of them were adopted and last amended in '96. The amendment, the exception to that is NAC 388460. That was amended in 2019. That's a definitional section, not one of the ones that actively tells people what to do. It's just defining terms. But the rest of those were not touched in the last 20 years. So those were the implementing regulations that implemented the prior system. In 2015, 395 was repealed. Most of it went away completely. Some of those sections survived in Chapter 388. But in its place, the old funding system that General Counsel Romardo was talking about, the case system was put in place. So for the last about 10 years, the case system has been what has been the way that these extreme special education systems get funded in Nevada. Ms. Bowers can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe money has been paid out under the old system since the implementation of CASE. So the legislature is funding the CASE system. The legislature repealed 395 and asked NDE to transition to the CASE system. School districts have been using that system. Washoe County has used that system. That's the way when these students are funded. So you'll see kind of, Mr. Romardo did mention some of these references to 388, 5211 in some of the regulations. One of the reasons these are revised statutes, LCD can make changes to things. Some of the provisions in Chapter 395 moved to Chapter 388. The ones that survived are 5223, 5239, and 5241. So those references in the NAC are referencing the old 395 that moved over to Chapter 388. So it doesn't mean that the state board went back and amended these regulations after the adoption of, or after 2015, because you can see in these regulations at the very bottom of each regulatory section, let me just finish, remember, at the very bottom of each regulatory section, it'll say brackets, Board of Education, handicapped persons, Section 3, effective 12/21, and then it says NAC adopted 3/14/96. So that's the last time it was amended, was in '96. So that's the date that you can tell. That's how you can kind of tell how old the regulations are. I'll pause there because I know Member Orr, you had your hand raised.
Yes, Member Orr, just before we go any further, just because we're being asked to make a decision on a regulation, and you mentioned that there's current litigation, and I just want to make sure that we're doing everything correctly. So as Deputy Attorney General, are you working with the department right now and with us? Can you consult with both the Board of Education and with the department? What if we have differing opinions on this? And can you consult with both of us? Like, or should we have two different tags on it?
Deputy Attorney General Greg Ott, thank you for that question. That's an excellent question. The only defendant in the lawsuit that Washoe County has named is the Nevada Department of Education. The state board has not been named right now, so I don't think that there is any need for conflict counsel, which is what we think about when there's two entities that potentially have different interests. Should things change, they amend their lawsuit for some reason, state board gets drug into this, we could certainly address that, but as of right now, happy to speak with you, speak with the department on both, on the regulation and on.
And then my second question is, do you disagree with any of the facts as presented by Mr. Lombardo?
When you say facts, I think, what was a fact and what was a legal argument? Because he started out with a recitation of why these had been amended after 2015. And I do disagree that the regulations have not been amended since 2015, with the exception of 388-460, which was the definitional section that was touched in 2019. So I do disagree with that recitation. And with regard to the way that funding is handled for children with diverse needs, I would defer to Ms. Bowers, who is the expert in this area. But my understanding is that the case system is used for residential placements in certain circumstances. And so that has been communicated, and it's not a deal breaker that some of the requests are for residential.
I asked a question to Ms. Bowers about why the application would preclude residential placements if residential placements are allowed.
The current application states that there's no residential services for private schools in the purity of just residential placement. For districts who have been approved for residential placement, it is because they have shown a direct link to the student's academic success and the need for residential services based on their academic needs.
Ms. Bowers, are there many public schools that have residential placements within the United States or within our state?
Julie Bowers for the record. I don't believe we have any public schools that have residential services. However, I would have to research that more completely.
Thank you. Director Bowers. Oh, go ahead.
I just have a question. How imperative is it for us to take this action now? Would it be prudent to let this process play out and then address this issue once we've kind of gone through the process, is what I'm wondering, and gives us time to do some research?
Deputy Attorney General Greg Ott. Understandable. So just so you know the backstory, because these regulations hadn't been used for a long time, I don't believe that most people were aware that there was an existence. When Washoe County alerted the department to their existence and the fact that they point to a system where there is no funding, so even if the application comes in, there's no legislatively approved way to get money out the door. My recommendation was to repeal them as quickly as possible to avoid confusion, make sure all the districts are operating under the same playing field. I will keep in mind that this is a temporary regulation, so whether you adopt it today or not, you're going to see something again when the permanent period opens later this year after the LCB drafters get done doing all of the legislation. So that the need to move quickly is really just to provide clarity to the state that these regulations point to a process that is unfunded and that was repealed in 2015. Legally, Mr. Romardo has mentioned repeal by implication, a legal term that basically means when you have a law that is been superseded completely by another law, that law is the first one is sort of goes away. He's correct, it's disfavored under the law, but doesn't mean it never happens. Things get repealed by implication. It is a doctrine that happens at times. So I believe it has been repealed by implication. Obviously, General Counsel Romardo disagrees. We're going to have that fight in front of the court. My recommendation to the board was to take action to try to clarify the regulatory process so that the rest of the districts know that there's one set of rules, the funding goes through case, And that's the process that people should use. So, yeah.
I think one more question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Member Orr.
Just, and I don't know what the legal term would be, but for these kind of dead regulations or, what would be like a better way or a more regular way of looking to make sure that we don't have regs on the books for 15 years at a time so that there is confusion? Like, should we be looking for these so we're not creating confusion in the public?
So that's an excellent point. And there is a periodic review that goes on. All agencies who have regulations review them periodically. I can't speak to why this was not picked up in one of the department's regulations. As you know, there's a number of demands on the department's time. My guess is this was missed in the prior reviews, but there is a process in place where regulations are periodically reviewed.
Okay, thank you for the questions and excellent discussion up north. We have a couple questions down here. I'll start with Member Ford. I don't have a whole lot of questions. I guess I'm just going to share some of my thoughts and what I think is the smartest thing for us to do. Obviously, you know, I'm using AI because I'm obsessed with it. But, you know, I use AI in a way that, you know, processes information and comes up with valid thought points. And what this is telling me, and it makes sense in comparing the information that we received that is public in our agenda materials and looking through the exhibit that was given to us, it does appear that the purpose in the notice is misleading. So I like this word, like the NDA, not trying to give any type of the intent towards anybody's actions. However, it appears as though we are being misled in some way. Especially because the notice claims that there's no public or economic impact. However, that's very false because there is the $589,000 residential placement hanging for Washoe. If we were to pass this, those costs go to the district. And the fact that there were no regulations attached to our information is just like not a good practice to move forward with to repeal something. I know from experience with CCSD that once you repeal something, it's very hard to go back from that. So also another thing that has not been brought up is what kind of responsibility could the state board be looking at if we find out that this was an unlawful thing to do. You know, from what I've looked at, it looks like Washoe's attorney has very valid points, to tell you the truth. And I would not feel comfortable going forward with a decision that's going to change. You know, this isn't just like a little tweak of policy language, it's an entire shift. And that's a big deal. However, I am on the Nevada State Board and it's my responsibility to, you know, oversee all of Nevada education. So we can't cater just towards one district either. I think this needs more review. I think we need someone else to give us a legal opinion on this, especially because our attorney has changed recently while this is going through. I think it's going to be smarter for us to ensure that we have all of the information and that none of this violates open meeting law, because there are a few things in here that are hinting at a possible open meeting law violation. And I think that the thing to do is to table the item and especially make sure that we have some sort of plan, that we hear a plan about how we're going to ensure access to those residential placements going forward before we make any decisions like that. So thank you. Okay. Next, we have Member Hudson.
Member Hudson,
I think this is maybe it's two questions, because as a board member, then the educator as a whole, like what, if this repeal passes, how does this affect, my first question would be, how would this impact us when it comes to, IDEA? And will we be against, providing that student service? And then also, I would like to know, where does it leave the student, like as of today, and then what would happen tomorrow to that student? Especially saying that it said that it didn't, kind of like, Washoe County is saying that it is costing them. So if it's going to affect their budget, then how would, like, is NDEA going to also have like some type of plan to support them instead of leaving them with that big cost? So it doesn't impact, because then eventually that big cost is going to impact their classrooms when it comes to providing services to students. And not only that, making sure we have teachers in that classroom. So I hope that is clear.
Steve Cambero, interim superintendent, and Julie and Greg, please weigh in here. There's to Member Hudson's question, the intent is to support the student, or that's our intent. We've come to the table, we've talked about ways. We just can't come to an agreement that Washoe County is seeking through the regulations that are, I think the term dead is a good term for them. Districts have and continue to use and it's just as open to Washoe as it is to anybody else, the case system. And as you heard previously, the case system does support our access to the contingency account for these exceptional expenses that a school district would incur for students in residential settings, should that residential setting be determined by the IEP team in the review to be necessary for the academic support. So we've said as much to Washoe. We've said that we will work through the process. We'll make the student eligible. We're trying to figure out ways to improve our system so that it's not, for like a district, and I don't want to use you as an example, but Superintendent Else, for a district that would have to incur the cost and then be reimbursed at the end of the fiscal year, that could be a hardship. So we're looking at ways to reimburse more frequently. We're not deaf to challenges that districts have, but we also need to be fair and equal-minded and follow the regulations and the laws. So I guess in close, this system is set up for the very example that Member Hudson, the very question that you asked, it is set up to access for those exceptional high costs and exceptional needs for students. And it is available and districts are using it. There's just something here that we're not able to find resolution on with Washoe County School District. And if I'm wrong, Deputy Ott or Julie on any of those points.
Deputy Attorney General Greg, I know that's my understanding is that the existing system is funding and supporting these students through the case system. So the question of whether this repeal changes the status quo is the case system. Repeal just clarifies that there is no other option and that all districts have to play by the same rules and go through the case system, which is what the legislature intended when it repealed 395 10 years ago.
Thank you for that clarification, Member Hughes.
Thank you, Member Hughes, for the record. I was just going to share one reminder to the board, and then I have one question. So one of the things and many folks sitting up here have been through this, just to remind folks that we have had very different topics, but very similar regulatory cleanups, I would call them. And they've been non-controversial. We have not even had a discussion about them. And so I think it is important that we separate the regulatory process from whatever folks want to fight in the court of law, which we are not. And so they can have that argument with their legal points and somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, and that's fine. I think our obligation from a regulatory standpoint is to make sure that things are alignment and make sense and give people guidance and direction. And I think we can do those in parallel tracks, but in my own way of thinking about this, I'm trying to keep those two things very separate. Because again, if there was not a pending case about this, we would have passed this 20 minutes ago and moved on and nobody would have said a word about it. So just want to remind folks about that. The question is though, we heard from the speaker about the deep care and concern for the student. And so I'm assuming that means that they are doing everything in their power to make sure that the student is currently in the setting best for them while all of this litigation is pending. But I'm wondering if, Dagat, could you share what is the obligation for a district in any of these kinds of situations where there's a question about who's paying? Because obviously a lot of time is being eaten up when that student is not getting the services. And so I'm hopeful that Washoe is doing right by the student and actually providing them the services that they require while you all are figuring this out in court. But what is the legal obligation for a district to provide those services when these kinds of questions come up?
Thank you, Member Hughes.
Steve Cambro, interim state superintendent. I think that's a great question. And Julie, by all means, or Director Bowers, weigh in. The obligation for FAPE is held at the district level. So they're obligated to serve the student. It's been a question that we continue to work with Washoe County on, ensuring that the placement of the student in the interim basis is consistent with the district's IEP team's decision, and then is on a path to receive the residential placement. I mean, honestly, that's a major concern for us. I mean, as it is a concern for any district, and we take it serious when there might be an interruption in the provision of FAPE for a student. So we explore those on a case-by-case basis. I think going forward, something that's just frankly troubling to me is that I feel like there's a delay in this process through the litigation. And we're doing what we can to expedite it, but we can't sign contracts that we're being requested to sign, things of that nature that are inconsistent we think inconsistent with the law, or inconsistent with how the practice happens in the state. So those delays we're keeping an eye on, and we're working with Washoe County School District on those.
So does that, am I interpreting correctly that in this current situation, Washoe is not upholding their FAPE requirements?
Okay. So Member Hughes, I appreciate that concern. I want to say that was one of the first conversations that I had when General Counsel and I were part of discussed. I don't want to comment on the details of that because it was settlement context, but I want to assure you that it's top of the mind, I think, for everybody involved.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, as Representative Washoe, may I be heard on this since I'm being discussed without notice and without being placed on the agenda? This is a regulatory hearing, not about what Washoe is doing. May I be heard?
Please state your comments.
Thank you. First of all, you've exceeded the agenda, which is another open meeting law violation. Secondly, what the NDE is doing is they're trying to drag you into this so that you will be part of the litigation. That's why they're trying to repeal it. But most importantly, as it relates to this child, I want to be very clear that my superintendent has specifically said, I don't care what it takes. If we have to pay for it out of our budget, we will do it. Now, we've stepped up. It's time for you to step up. Let me also point out, correct the record on something that Mr. Ott said. I never said that the NAC for Program for Persons with Disabilities with Unique Needs was amended. What I said was it references all current NRS, which is what's required under 233B of the law. And if it no longer was valid, why did you guys amend it yourselves in 2019? Come on, who are we kidding here? Plus, let's mention funding. NRS 388-5243 specifically says it funds programs for kids with disabilities. Guess what's referenced in what I'm citing to you? 388-5243. Guess what's not in law anymore? Case. just push the pedal down, the brake pedal, stop it.
Thank you, Mr. Lombardo, for your statements. So I am hearing that I appreciate Member Hughes's comments and the reminder that this is a regulatory hearing and that our job is not to discuss or determine any of the stuff that's being litigated, but specifically we are here to determine and help clean up some of the regulations that have been overlooked for the past decade. So with that, do I have a motion to approve the repeal of the regulation?
Member Hughes, I move to repeal the regulations.
Is there a second?
Member Hudson, second.
All right, thank you, Member Hudson, for the second. Any discussion? Member Orr.
Or I do think this is different than other regulatory hearings because we are being asked to look at a regulation that does impact ongoing litigation. And so for that reason, I will not be voting for the repeal of this particular regulation at this time.
Okay, any other discussion? Member Keys?
And I just wanted to keep this at the front of people's mind when we're voting, when you guys are voting about this, is that you guys are voting for like a temporary change. We're in the blackout period right now, so we will be looking at this again in a few months. Once the legislature is over and the people over at the LCP can draft it more fully.
Thank you, Member Keys. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Trying to count votes here. All in favor? Aye. We have Member Hudson, Member
Aye.
Hughes, Dockweiler. Aye. Dawson Owens and Braxton. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
And Member Orr and Member Ford. Any abstentions? None? Okay, passes. Given the time frame here, it is 11:18. We will take a convenience break and reconvene at 11:30.
I don't.
Sure. Things have changed. Yes. Craig's birthday? Craig. Oh, no. Yeah, he still has open. You know me. Oregon. I can't say Oregon. Oregon. Both of them, I said Oregon, and I'm like, I can't say it. I can't get one of my copies. Get linked as far, and I already have like half of these yourself out of the comment at the phone.
You guys. I heard she got a promotion. Yeah. That is absolutely. Have you guys heard me report this thing? Where she's free, she transitioned to a second. Oh, wow. Everybody is like. Yeah. Well, she gotta go where the sex is. Make sure that. For a second, I thought you had your popcorn there. I'm not even.
Okay, it is 11:30 and we will reconvene our meeting. We are on agenda items 8, and now the board will receive information from Dr. Canavero, interim state superintendent of public instruction, and Anne Marie Dixon, deputy superintendent of the student achievement division, regarding the selection of the read by grade 3 assessment. Please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, President Dockweiler, members of the board, Steve Canavero, interim state superintendent, and as my wing person, Anne Marie Dixon, for her short time left in pole position here to help support this item. I just want to say, appreciate, this is one of those trains that I joined very much in motion and have done my best to hold on to it and to keep up to it. So let me just sort of clarify my understanding sort of where we are. And it really ends with your April 3rd special meeting and the conversation, the discussion that you all had, rich discussion that you all had regarding the selection of a read by grade 3 assessment. You know, the constraints within which you are working today are that you have to select and assess. There was conversation on April 3rd. We heard public testimony today that having multiple would be ideal. That unfortunately is not an option. Okay. After the April 3rd meeting, Anne Marie and I put our heads together. We engaged, I should say, with a new state purchasing team and have had many conversations around procurement, purchasing. They've been incredibly supportive. They're here today should you have any questions on sort of the technical information. But what I thought I would do is just provide to you what we think your options are. And then you all can discuss those or add to those however you wish. You'll see in your board packet that there's a recommendation from the department to extend the existing read by grade 3 assessment contract with MAP for 1 year. And there's a few reasons for that, and they're bulleted. The first reason is a change in the assessment for the upcoming school year in May creates training and administrative challenges. So after the April 3rd meeting, my pragmatic mind went into, okay, like what are the options and really what will this look like next year? I went to a meeting of the superintendents. So I went to a NAS meeting, and Superintendent Else, please correct me if you feel like I'm saying anything incorrect here. And I just asked the collection of superintendents, hey, this is implementation only. I'm not asking for opinions on which assessment is better than the other. That's the purview of the board. I'm just asking an implementation question. If the board decided in May at this meeting to change from MAP, is that feasible? And the general sentiment, and this is the room sentiment, was that it was for districts who are offering both. The district has made a decision to use a particular assessment in addition to the assessment that's mandated by the state, so MAP, and iReady would be a good example of this in the public testimony that we heard. They would have lower level concern about making a change in May, obviously. But the others who are currently using MAP expressed a number of concerns about a switch in May. So it was just a purely practical implementation question and the feasibility of doing that. And the sentiment from the room was, if everything remained the same, we could do that. If we were to make a change, it would be very challenging, especially in some of our smaller or more rural districts. So that's the genesis for the first bullet. The second one follows in the sense of just continuity from prior years. That's continuity in professional development, training. Many of the superintendents had expressed that the 3 to 4 days of professional development that they already have for next year have been booked by this time. I think that was a sentiment that was shared at the last meeting as well, and that was reiterated in that meeting. The third bullet is that by extending the MAP assessment, you then give yourselves a bit of an opportunity once the legislative session were to end here shortly. You'd have a full picture of the assessment ecosystem or the landscape of assessments and changes. And currently there's a bill in the legislative session. I believe Washoe County is supportive of it. I don't know that, but it's asking for multiple read by grade 3 assessments. So the more than one that you're currently constrained by, that would change for if this bill were to pass in the next biennium. So after the legislative session, you could say, all right, now we have a full view. There have been some changes, and you could take up this item again. And then the final bullet is that it also allows us, I heard, with the procurement process and communications, again, just credit to the new purchasing team and to Anne Marie and the conversations that we've had. It really affords us some time to figure out what's going to work for you as you make these big decisions, and you have another one coming, which is the 3 through 8 assessment. We would work with purchasing, work with you to figure out what's the ideal process within the constraints of the law and procurement rules that we could then work with you to then present recommendations for assessment decisions going forward. So that was sort of the homework that we did. Again, very practical, very implementation focused, and looking into next year. I will add one other thing before I pause and then invite Anne-Marie if I've missed something, or Superintendent Else if I've misspoke about the sentiment from NAS. The final thing is we have moved forward on your options. And so an example of not like move forward all the way through, but set up all of kick the process into gear so that whatever decision you make today, we can expedite that decision. So an example is we've already notified purchasing for the amendment to the MAP contract. So all of those things are in place. So should you choose to extend, we wouldn't just start from first step, we would start from the step after you have made the suggestion. So trying to limit the time for the implementation. And the second option, or second area of work that we have continued to move forward with is on the iReady, or the Curriculum Associates iReady contract. So it's not signed, but it is prepared to be signed. So again, getting it to the very edge of your decision so that as soon as you make a decision, we don't have to wait for the Board of Examiners to convene and further delay a change if that's the direction that you want to go. Lastly, you could, and this is kind of in addition to the recommendation, but one that emerged in the last few days, you could extend the existing MAP read by grade 3 assessment for the next school year and simultaneously approve the iReady contract subject to negotiations to begin the following school year. So want to make sure that would be what the 25-26 would be MAP, and then the 26-27 would be iReady. That is available to you should you choose to go that direction. But again, the department's recommendation at this point, specifically just around implementation and continuity and listening to the feasibility, is to extend the existing read by grade 3 assessment that currently exists for one additional year. So, Emery, anything further? No. Superintendent Else, did I clarify anything I got wrong there, please?
No, I don't believe there was anything wrong. Washoe and Lyon County certainly could implement it much easier next year, but it was a pretty unanimous across the room. Implementation by August would be pretty tough. Superintendent Ebert especially thought in Clark County the implementation process would be too short of a timeline. The other factor for several of the districts, especially in a time of budgets kind of diminishing, in the current contract with NWEA, we get 4th, 5th, and 6th grade reading assessment free in our elementary schools. And so that's a pretty big cost thing just for the schools that are currently doing it. And then I've asked the question a couple times, I don't know where it would land, but I would really like a clear decision on the ACing accountability, but we would still have to double test because that's part of a requirement for ACing accountability as the MAP assessment scores. And so we've been told the governor's aware of that, but as it stands right now, ACing accountability does require the MAP assessments.
Steve Canaveral, I apologize for not answering the question. I do recall you asking it. I will elevate that and get back to you. My hope would be that the efficiency of not double testing would override anything else.
That's all of our hope.
All right, thank you for the presentation and the information, and thank you, Member Else, for supporting the information presented on behalf of NAS. I appreciate the recommendation here and the 4 bullets for rationale. They seem to make a lot of sense and they seem to reflect the concerns that we had at our last meeting on this topic. Also relative to the public comment that we received earlier, there currently is no opt-out option for districts. This is for the state mandated test. And so whatever the board decides currently is not, that would be the assessment that would need to be given. If a second assessment were elected by a district to be given, that would be in addition to what the board is requiring, but the board only requires the 1 assessment. So with that, I will open it up to any questions or comments from the board, but I do appreciate the recommendation put before us today. Member Keys.
Really quick, Superintendent Canizaro, do you know the bill number for the bill that you were referencing, where it would allow multiple options for the read by grade 3 exam?
Thank you for the question. I had a phone a friend, AB 386 is the bill. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
I think that that's the decision of the board, and I think the 2 routes that we could go down, and I think the discussion is going to go, is if we implement it for another year, and then we just decide then, or if we make the decision today to approve iReady for the 26-27 school year. I think that it would be in our best favor to just extend the contract a year so that when we get to that point, we have more flexibility. And if AB 386 passes, then we can look further into that at that point.
Member Keys, that makes a lot of sense. You raised some good points and also reflects our concerns that we had at our last meeting relative to the procurement process and the potential need to redo that. So thank you. Member Hughes.
Member Hughes, the record. I had a couple of questions and a comment. Going on that bill, and I might have just missed this, sorry, on 386, is that in effect immediately if it passes? Like what's the time horizon? And could, if that does pass, would that still allow for this school year for districts already doing both if they so choose to then use that other assessment?
Good question. We're looking it up right now.
Yeah,
into the bill.
yeah.
We'll get right back to it.
Okay, while y'all are looking that up, I'll bring up one other point, because I know that can be deep in the weeds of those bills. The one thing that I did just want to name that did give me a little bit of concern. So last time, if you remember, we did not have all the materials from the selection, and then we were given those and able to look at those. And so one thing that was interesting as I looked at the scores is there was like a pretty big range where some reviewers scored a 2 and then some scored a 9, which, you know, like when I was principal of a school, if we had a clear rubric on my campus and one teacher was giving a student an F and one was giving a B, to me that like alarm bells go off that somebody is not normed or understanding how to use the rubric. And so I'm wondering, I know Member Eltz, you were, I think, part of the process, like, could somebody just describe like, how did we ensure that everybody was sort of normed? Like how do you make sense of the big range of scores that were given? Because you would expect if the product would stand on its own, if it either met or didn't meet certain criteria, but it seems like from the scores, it was all over the place for all the products that we looked at. So I would love to learn a little bit more about that process and how we feel confident that those raters were all normed and applying the rubric in the same way.
I don't know what all I can share. What can I share from the RFP process now? I mean, everything? Okay. I think there was an attempt and an effort made for that to happen, but I think we did fill all the information out on forms and we had to readjust the forms on the fly in the meeting, which I was pretty uncomfortable with. And then throughout that process, there were only 15 people on the RFP process, but they were present on the day of that. And so I was a little bit concerned about that. I mean, I don't think there was anything that was done wrong throughout the process by any means, but, I think probably there were more than one person had your concern of the varying scores for sure. The other part is then when the price factors were factored in at the end, we didn't see the prices on any of them. And then that changed the scoring at the end as well through the sheet, throughout that process. So, but I think it's challenging. It's challenging to norm everybody in that particular scenario, but from the stance of a school district standpoint, I really, the technology is a huge piece of it. And so I think the implementation part and the technology piece needs to be factored in. If the RFP process moves forward again in a different manner, I really think that there needs to be the implementation piece and technology piece looked at in that.
Thank you, Member Hills. And then related, and this might be for Deputy Superintendent Dixon, do we, I can't remember in our process when we've done this before, do we look at the committee members' exposure to the products? And I'm just thinking when I've run similar processes, you know, like people, if I've used MAP before and then I read a MAP proposal and I've never used other products, you know, it's like hard to not be a little bit biased. And so do we have equal representation of individuals who have used various products so that doesn't skew the process? And I can't remember if we looked at that in the criteria of who was on that committee or not, but can you remind us?
Deputy Superintendent Dixon, for the record, I'm going to ask my friends at purchasing if there was any kind of a rubric or something that the committee goes over prior to starting the process. I apologize, I was not part of the process and have not been part of a state process.
So William Taylor, Administrator of Purchasing. Again, William Taylor, Administrator of Purchasing. I'm 4 weeks on the job, and so you've already established that I could phone a friend. So I brought our PO3, Ryan Bradenberg, with me, and he will attempt to answer your questions.
Hello, Ryan Bradenberg, Purchasing Officer 3 for the record. Yes, there's a baseline of procurement processes that we implement. One of those is to provide under NRS 333, there's a requirement to provide posted instructions upon request from any vendors, the public, and parties of interest. There is some already drafted available publicly on our purchasing website that follows the scoring mechanism and method that we use. Agencies or representative boards can, at the beginning of an RFP, determine if they, how they would like to, what criteria they would like to use to score the proposals. And in doing so, there's some option where they can ideate back and forth about whether to have cost and technicals scored in various ways. The board did have 22 original evaluators submitted. 22 of them signed the acceptance memo. They represented Washoe County, Clark County, Lyon County, Nye County, Carson County, and Eureka County school districts, as well as Somerset Academy of Las Vegas, the Attorney General's Board, student member, and a delegate from UNR. But only 15 were able to complete we chose to participate for the evaluation or have been able to complete the requirements of the technical by the deadline that the RFP had presented, the timeline, sorry, that the RFP had presented. And so that is the criteria piece is presented generally in a pre-evaluation meeting or with the instructions provided to the members.
Got it. Okay, but we don't have information, or we didn't use in this case any criteria around equal distribution of people's familiarity with the vendors or their products.
Correct, Ryan Bradenberg for the record. No, that would come directly from either the Department of Education on their selection of the committee members or the board.
Okay, perfect. And the reason I asked is to like connect the dots here is, and just for the future, I would recommend that's something the department look at. Because given the score discrepancy, my hypothesis would be that when somebody's reading a proposal, it's in a language they can understand because they are very familiar with that tool or product. That proposal makes a whole lot more sense to them than when they're trying to read another proposal, like, I don't know what y'all are scoring, that doesn't make any sense, right? And then they're gonna give them a lower score, like that is one potential reason why we see the score distribution that we did. And so I think one way we could mitigate for that is to ensure that there is some sort of equal distribution of who's on that committee, the level of familiarity they have with who we suspect might apply. And I know we don't always know on the front end, so, but again, I think that that might be something worth looking into in the future. I think that's it for now, and then whenever we have the 386 answer, we can come back to that.
Thank you, President Dockweiler, Steve Camero, interim superintendent. I think delivering an answer. So the amendment, it's effective upon passage because the prior amendment, an amendment was, and basically the amendment that's on the, in Nellis right now deleted the effective date of July 1st, 2025. But there is I think maybe reasonably so, because there is a requirement that the department adopts regulations within the first 45 days of school in a school year. So it's, I think if I'm quickly reading this and understanding the intent, it seems to me to be a pretty quick turnaround if this bill were to pass through the legislature to provide quite a bit of flexibility. So it wouldn't just be two, it would be sort of really any that meets particular requirements that are established by the state.
Cool, thank you. So it seems like because we are not allowed to give an exemption and have to choose an assessment, and there's a chance that that bill will pass, that could actually do the thing that Washoe is asking for, it sounds like, from what you're saying. So that is helpful, thank you.
All right, excellent. Member Hudson.
Member Hudson, for the record. One quick question, because I feel like we're in a system that's not currently working, so we're also delaying outcomes, student outcomes. So thinking of that, if we are to stay with MAPS like for one more year, is there a plan, or what is the plan to bridge the gap between data and practice? Because those are two different systems. So then that means we'll be losing the work we already currently have with this system. So like, how have we talk about the bridging gaps when it comes to the data and the practice of it?
Steve Camero, Member Hudson, is that question, is it okay if I chime in?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't think, so it's a great question, and it's sort of lost in this logistical, what can be implemented next year versus what can't be implemented next year. I do feel though, in the conversations that we have with superintendents, it is around that. It strikes to your question. They feel like they would want some time to realign whatever those particular supports are required in the Read by Grade 3 Act with the signals that are sent for a student who does not achieve the percentile that you established demonstrating the readiness to read. So I think that's sort of baked in, if you will, behind the scenes. Obviously, if there are multiple assessments, then it's wholly owned by the district in order to figure out what they need to do. If they continue with MAP, then maybe their systems are already aligned, but if they choose to use something different, then it would be wholly up to the district to figure out how to both meet the provisions of the law, but also the requirements within their district for learning strategies, reading strategies, whatever it is that they might have to support students and struggling readers.
All right, thank you. Member Ford.
Thank you. I have a lot of thoughts because I had a lot of what I thought was an understanding of what we were going to do going forward after the last meeting. Two of those things are on our agenda after this, which is a superintendent discussion and also possible vision planning. Both of those things that we have yet to discuss are going to
ultimately determine how we move forward with student assessment. So it's silly to me to lock into something right now that I would like to see change the way that we think about education, the way that we think about data. I would like to go in a direction with leadership and with the community that is more holistic focused. So I'm just on the record, and I'm pretty frustrated right now. And I'll also say that I understand that we have been outlined 3 possible directions to go forward with. I understand the logistical constraints, the need to ensure continuity, whether that's with MAP, with iReady, or combining the 2. You know, we've been told that those are our 3 options, but I want to be clear that none of these 3 options reflect the direction that I believe that this board and the state of Nevada should ultimately be moving in. These 3 options are centered around pre-selected vendor solutions. That leaves absolutely no room to consider what I think should be on the table, which is educator-developed, state-supported alternatives that are grounded in instruction, not grounded in procurement. Other states like New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York have successfully implemented performance-based or educator-designed assessments. They have moved away from commercial testing packages, and instead they are investing in professional learning, local assessment design, and community accountability. These are not hypothetical. This is not Danielle's big picture plan that she's telling to the board. These are proven methods that are working in other states, and we are not even considering their existence. If we truly want to revisit the statewide vision, and we're about to select a new superintendent, this is the moment for us to ask, what would it look like to build something unique to Nevada, something more reflective of what educators actually need rather than what vendors are ready to sell. Our educators are fatigued. Our students are tired of assessments. I went to CCSD since I was in kindergarten. This is not what school looks like. Nobody likes it. There's a lot of data to show that this type of Chromebook continued assessment, which is basically become day-to-day testing, does not work. And on a whole other topic is impacting mental health. We cannot continue like this. So I want to be on the record as advocating for a 4th path. Preferably, I would love to see a hold harmless year, but only if it comes with that commitment to explore commercial alternatives. And I would like to, at some point, request a future agenda item dedicated to exploring educator-led alternatives to commercial assessments. Lastly, I have to express concern about the 4th bullet under the MAP extension recommendation that says that it allows NDE to work with the state board and purchasing to design a procurement approach that meets state board needs and operates within state constraints. We need to stop turning to procurement. And if we were to approve this as is, with this being the backup that we're planning, then it already sets us up to be just looking for another thing to purchase. So if we do really have to choose one of these 3 options right now to move forward, then I would support extending that for 1 year. That's the most cautious option, but it's a weird time to do that because we're literally just now 5 minutes after this vote going to start discussing what kind of leader we need for the district and what kind of vision planning we want to do with our constituents and our community. So I don't have a motion right now, but I wanted that on the record, and extending that for 1 year is the lowest amount of any type of buying into a certain ideology that I'm willing to do. We need to get more creative and we need to get more holistic. We have the ability to be the bar for education if we really want to, and stop just turning to other people for packaged, solutions that they're going to sell us. We need to be better at this. That's all.
Thank you, Member Ford. Yeah, I agree. We are faced with some unusual timelines in front of us. Member Hughes has a clarifying question, and then we'll go to Member Orr, who has a question of more.
Yeah, Member Hughes record, and appreciate those comments, Member Ford. And I think the push is right for us to be thinking wholesale about all the pieces. But I just want to clarify. So you're saying maybe the pathway you're suggesting is approve extension of math because legally still on the books, there has to be something until we were to change that law. But not necessarily prescribed selection of iReady yet. And one option could be, do we want to do a state created, which obviously costs a lot of money and a lot of expertise, but we could pay for that, right? Those other states have invested a lot of money that you named. So we would have, like we would, but is that, would have that right? That would sort of be like part one of the recommendation you think to extend, but then hold on the not saying yes, I already quite yet until we explore that. Is that right?
Yeah, you nailed it. And the only thing again would be maybe, I know this isn't like a contract that we're approving as is, but I just, that last bullet where it basically says that we'll hold off, or we'll do this until we find something else to purchase. There's ways that we don't know what the fiscal note is gonna be. Sure, other states have had to hire consultants and stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we would as well. So without assuming that that would be a very expensive thing to do, I'd like to input to decide if we want to continue going in a vendor select approach or if we'd like to make that investment into a new type of education like you described. All right, thank you for the clarification there. Number 4.
I do think it's important to remember that back in September when this came up, several of us mentioned that we thought that the timeline for procurement would lead to these problems for districts. And we said, if we come back in April or May with a new test, the districts will have already planned for their professional development in the fall. This will be a problem. So I would like to state that I really think the department needs to begin any procurement process that will impact districts far before the September school that we serve, to ask them to, take on a new test, a new textbook, a new curriculum, anything in April or May of the year before that they're being asked to put it in place. And so to remember that we are always in service to the district. Districts, to the principals, the administrators, we forget that, and we're talking about procurement, but that's number 1. Number 2, I just want to say that we received a lot of public comment today, and that's public comment that was all about the needs of students. And I understand that there are reasons why we can't, by state law, make a change that allows for people to use iReady alongside that there are restrictions that we can't make. But we need to hear that and make sure that we are responding to the fact that students are over-tested, right? We have 3rd grade students in some of these districts that are trying to do the right thing by kids and use an assessment system that is responsive to students and that allows the supportive of those students. There are 3rd grade students that are testing for 6 weeks at a time because they are taking I just really appreciate all of the people who took the time to speak on behalf of their students. Thank you for doing that. And I'm sorry for those students today, but I make an impact on how we make future decisions. So thank you for that. With all of the superintendents who are making decisions every day on behalf of the students across the state, and the superintendents asked us to keep math as the assessments next year. So I would like to move forward with using their.
Member Orr, is that a motion?
Sure.
Can you please restate your motion so we have full clarity?
that we adopt. Are we adopting it or just keeping it? Extending the contract for the NWEA math assessment for the coming school year.
Do I have a second?
Member else?
All right, member else, any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
I
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you, everyone.
Dockweiler.
Oh, please, go ahead.
This is Christy McGill. I'm so sorry for the interruption, but the man that helped us in the pandemic with over 33 server 8,000 students because of his overtime and Saturday day commitment helped us get there, and 8,000 students got the services they needed. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Brendan, for all of your work. So we will move on to agenda item 9, and we will move on to the discussion. We will discuss information gathered from the survey and followed by the discussion. We will discuss any possible action that we may want to search for our next state superintendent. I will direct you to look at the packet for item 9, which has the results of our survey. Pretty consistent buckets of information that were gathered there. So while our board members are pulling that information up, I will also review some of this at our last meeting. So at April 3rd, we approved that the board would hold public meetings in the North and South online about the discussion of the board members and the survey. So we can move forward with this information to search, or we can decide to continue with the gathering. And moving forward, we do have in July, and we're able to gather. Our goal was to distribution by our June 25th meeting, and that we would post that for approximately 20 days. So if the posting went live on July 1st, it would be live for till July 20th, and then we could review information at our July 30th meeting and the interviews. So just wanted to lay that timeline out there as a reminder. Initial thoughts of this board, and I will open it up to any board members who have comments or thoughts on the information. All right, number 4, to start us off, please. I just have a quick question. So first of all, in a conversation that made me feel good about